Laconia City Council scheduled for 6 p.m. on June 13, 2016. I will note for the record that we only have 3 councilors present at the start of this meeting, and we do not have a quorum. But since we are not conducting any official business tonight or taking any votes, I think we can proceed. So we will. And so first up for these budget presentations tonight will be the Water Department. And Mr. Nuttleman.
Good evening. Just for the record, Seth Nuttleman, here to represent the Board of Water Commissioners and the Water Department's proposed budget. Just like to give you a brief rundown of what it entails. I believe everybody's received a copy. But basically, what we're proposing is a 1.14% increase, or basically $31,000 over last year. A couple of things to take into consideration. That proposed, as far as revenue goes, we are budgeting for a decrease again in our gallons sold of 1.5%. And this marks the 16th year that we've averaged 1.5% decrease in gallons sold. We believe it's obviously due to the economy and primarily due to conservation measures, but you will see that in there. Since the last time that we met, the board put into effect a rate increase. We raised the consumption from $1.45 per 100 cubic feet to $1.85 per 100 cubic feet. Kept the base rate the same at 20, and that generated approximately $250,000 in proposed revenue. The primary...
Just since April it did?
No, I'm sorry, for annually. Basically, that was because of the fact that we're selling less water, and we had to make up for that. And we're also anticipating quite a few large capital investments over the next 4 or 5 years. So the good news is that still puts us very low as far as other departments in the state. We'll be running about the 13th lowest out of 104. So we're still in good standing as far as that concerned. And your average family of 4 spends about 73 cents a day for water. So while it was an increase, the numbers aren't astronomical. I'd like to take a couple minutes and just run through a couple of things that are in the news before we get into the dollars and cents, if you would. Drinking water is obviously in the news. Recently, we just passed out our Consumer Confidence Report, and we met all state and federal regulations with no violations for the year of 2015. This is obviously done in arrears. So we're in good standing there as far as water's concerned. One thing that's been in the news a great deal lately is lead and the Flint, Michigan crisis. Just so everybody can rest assured, our lead levels are marginal or below detection, and we operate under a 3-year waiver from the state of New Hampshire DES because historically our lead levels have been so low that we only have to test every 3 years. So as far as a lead situation happening here in Laconia, we can rest assured we're in pretty good shape there. We did go ahead when everything broke in Flint and went out and did additional lead testing. Wasn't required, but we thought it was probably in our best interest. And currently, we're working in conjunction with the school department, excuse me, and we're testing all the schools for lead as well, just so that we've got a comfort level there. PFOAs are another thing that's in the news. Basically, PFOAs, we see the contamination in ground wells, but it can also be airborne. So we received a list from DES of manufacturers in the Lakes region that had used it in the past, and we tested our PFOA levels in our source water, and we came up with a count of 2. So that's 2 parts per trillion, and the action level is 100. Currently, EPA is thinking about dropping that to 70. So we don't have a PFOA issue in Laconia either. A couple of things to keep in mind while we're on water quality is milfoil. At this point in time, I'm not aware of any applications coming through the state for any form of chemical application to Paugus Bay. There is going to be some diver-assisted suction harvesting being conducted in Pickerel, Moulton, and Langley Coves, but that's the only activity that I'm aware of at this time.
You mean for this summer or planned for the future?
For this summer. There is a long-term plan set up through Amy Smagula with DES about how they're going to try to combat some of the larger growths of milfoil in the area, and obviously our concern is concentrations, location to the intake, and things such as that. We've also conducted a leak survey with a grant from DES. I just filed for the third year, so hopefully we'll get awarded the leak survey, leak grant for the upcoming year. We've so far tested about 40 miles out of the 100 miles of mains that we have. We've found 3 leaks. 2 of them were very insignificant, but one of them was 30 to 40 gallons per minute, which is considerable for a system of our size. So that's been very beneficial, and especially because it's a free grant. So I did notice that a couple of things I just wanted to add was I know the council has talked during its goals and objectives how I can work the budget presentation into the goals and objectives of the city council. That's kind of tough as a water department. I mean, obviously, we can't do anything about demographics. We can't do anything about economic development, besides probably trying to keep the rates low. But we have noticed, and I have noticed in the past, that the council seems to have a great concern about communication and interaction between departments. And I think we've got that in good shape as from the water department's perspective. We're in the process of implementing CodePal, which is hopefully going to smooth out the approval process and the permit process throughout all the departments. And of course, we are on board with the Public Works Department and its road reconstruction. Obviously, Holman Street, we're going to be doing Tremont Street in this particular budget that's in front of you, and then the big one being Lakeside Avenue in the fall. And right now, we're ready for Lakeside Avenue. We'll start doing temporary water lines after Labor Day, and should have the water completed prior to the Pikes plant closing for paving. So that's a couple of things. I did mention some capital purchases. One of the reasons that we did do the rate increase, we do know that Public Works has on the docket repair of North Main Street, and that's a problem section for us above the fire station. Union Avenue, the last section going down towards Main Street, is on the back burner. We also are looking at decommissioning the old Weir's tank up by Cedar Lodge. And we've also got the Long Bay tank. The Long Bay tank's a steel tank over in Long Bay. And I'm having a tank inspection done, but I believe that they're going to tell us that it's time to rehab that tank. And so that's some of the reasons that we've done the rate increase. The rest of the budget, again, it's 1.1%. That's a little lower than usual. We average about 1.7% over the last 6 years as an annual increase. And the majority of that is labor and insurance, and we're also showing a $30,000 contingency fund. Although the department has a history of not using the contingency. We try to operate under the O&M without the contingency number.
Sorry, I missed the first few minutes of your presentation. Did you mention anything about the level of water consumption? Is that...
He did.
Okay, apologize.
I did, I'll just repeat it quickly. We're down 1.5% per year for the last 15 years consecutively. We think we may be at the bottom of that, looking at the current pumping records, but that will tell. This budget does show a proposed negative consumption of 1.5%.
How do you budget for capital improvements?
Capital improvements, we basically, let me see if I've got that here in front of me. Our capital purchases has to be a determined number through the budget, and basically what we do is we take the depreciation, we subtract the bond principal, and then any net loss. And depreciation for us is usually a very large number, $750,000. Our depreciation number is primarily so large because after developer puts in an infrastructure and a system, we actually take it over and have to depreciate it without any actual outlay to at its expense. So that's what gives us basically our capital number.
So what has that been historically?
Runs somewhere around $500,000, depending upon which particular year you're referring to. And you can see in our submittal here, this particular year, it's $563,000. We break that down into a couple of different areas, pipe replacement projects, and then capital purchases such as pickup trucks, pumps, computers, and we also go through and budget if we see a large item coming. You'll see in this particular year where we've got painting of the Long Bay tank. We carried $50,000, very similar to how we did the upgrade of the treatment plant. We set aside X number of dollars for so many years so that we could get started on a good playing
Well,
field.
how do you fit in a project like Lakeside Avenue?
That becomes a problem for us. And if you'll look down below, you can see under the 2016-2017 projects, we're carrying Lakeside Avenue at $200,000.
It's on page 136.
$200,000 is all we could carry without chopping out a great deal of the whole rest of the capital purchases. So what we do, if the board's so inclined, I've estimated that job's going to come in somewhere between $450,000 and $500,000. That's 2,000 feet of 12-inch pipe. What we can do is if we have the money in reserves, we can transfer the money out of savings into funds transferred for savings. It's a line item under revenues on your first page. And basically, that's how we fund any of these projects if we can't absorb it all completely under capital for that particular year. Lakeside Avenue came about kind of quickly.
So where's that number?
It's on the bottom of page 134, just up from the capital reserve, so funds transferred to capital reserve projects.
From savings. There is no line item in there because we haven't done that recently.
You keep a certain figure in reserve savings? I mean, do you have a,
We do. Currently, our tally sheet shows us at about $2 million total.
does that show on here?
That is not, it's on our financial statement.
So you have 2 million in reserves?
Correct.
Okay.
Of
And
which
this year, you're going to have to use a couple $100,000 of that. or-
we just
200
pulled
to
out
300.
$190,000 to cover Holman Street. We're going to have to pull out $250 to $300 to cover Lakeside.
How much?
250.
Probably 300. It's
300.
going to be between 450 and 500. The numbers aren't quite solid yet.
So you can do 200 out of cash flow, but the balance has got to come out of reserves.
Correct. And then, like I said, we're looking at the Long Bay tank. That could be run anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000. The decommissioning of the Weirs tank could be another 100. And then I know the Public Works Department is having some issues with the sewer on North Main Street, and that's a troubled spot for us, and I'm assuming that's probably going to be in the neighborhood of $400,000.
Do you ever bond for any of these things, rather than take it out of reserve?
We do bond. We did bond for the new 1.3 million gallon tank and part of the maintenance building. We currently owe $1 million on that bond, and it is up in 2029.
But you could still borrow.
We could, yes.
Any other questions?
Just from a benchmark standpoint, on this, from the city as a whole, generally recommended we have 10% in reserves for water departments. Any sense of what the benchmark is in that regard?
Right now, we've been running obviously much more than that. I mean, you can see that we basically almost have currently almost a year's operating expenses.
Right.
But the board felt that with everything coming down the road, rather than do any more rate increases or bond the work, we'd rather pay for it directly.
Right.
We can foresee those costs coming. I would anticipate that number in the next couple years being less than half of what it is now.
Due to the investments you're going to have to make.
Correct.
Can we, I mean, no, don't need it necessarily for this budget approval, but get a sort of a 5-year plan on capital from the water department?
I do. I have a CIP plan, which basically goes out until 2021. And again, it's broken down as far as the CIP committee reviews all this. But it goes through and it lists 16 different streets or tank projects that are on the
What's the total like?
docket. The total each year runs approximately between $450,000 and $650,000. The actual total on it all, I only have yearly totals. I do not have all the totals going out the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But I could get that for you.
Just trying to get a sense of the draw. I mean, a year in expenses is a lot, you would agree, but not necessarily if you look at it over a longer term.
Right.
Right. So just trying to get a flavor for it.
Okay.
How did you build up the reserve?
Over time and good management.
The depreciation.
I mean, just operating budget savings, or?
Operating budget savings, that's correct.
The depreciation is 7-something a year, right?
Yeah, it's $750,000 a year
They
is
spend
the
less than $750 a
depreciation.
year.
Yeah.
So that's how that works out in the numbers.
I mean, you're a capital-intensive business, so.
We are.
Any other questions for the water department? Okay, we thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming as well. We have, you're out represented by the library, though, tonight. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 directors of the library board, and
5, aren't we?
one is the director. So next up is library. Who's going to make the presentation?
67.
Mr. Moriarty and Mr. Bro.
Sure, okay.
And we are on page
67.
67.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Councilors. John Moriarty, Chairman of the Laconia Public Library Board of Trustees, and I am joined this evening by Library Director Randy Bro and Trustees Bob Selig, Glenn Smith, and Ole Anderson, and of course, City Council Liaison, Councilor Bear. Thank you for giving us some time to present our budget this evening, and I'd just like to, sort of give you a little bit of a layout here as to how we arrived at that budget. Of course, the city library budget is approximately 1% of the city budget, so we'll try and get through this as quickly as possible, because I know Mr. Myers is in a hurry to talk about assessing budgets. But tonight, I hope to speak with you 3 aspects of our operation. Number 1, our governance. Number 2, our operational plan. And of course, lastly, our budget. So Of course, on page 66 of the city budget, you have our organizational chart, which is somewhat unique. It's a little different than most of the other departments, and of course, near the top of that is the Library Board of Trustees. And I'd like to just take a moment to read this into the record, since you do such a marvelous job of archiving it. But at the head of the Library Board of Trustees is the chairman, and for the last 17 years, Mr. Robert J. Selig has been the chairman of Laconia Public Library's Board of Trustees. And he has recently, I think probably sometime in March or April, stepped down from that position. And if I could just reflect for a moment on his enormous accomplishments, he negotiated a succession plan with the previous director. He built we, under his stewardship, built a new 60-spot parking lot to replace our mere 8 parking spaces. He advertised, did an incredible search, and hired the current library director, Randy Breaux. We did the first significant electrification project somewhere back around 2002, so we could operate the lights and the air conditioning and the 2 computers we had at the same time. We built an enormous data network under his stewardship, which included the first in the state library wireless network. We've grown to some 40 total computers, 26 of which are for public use. And of course, everyone thinks of the library's new addition in 2004 and 5. We've digitized our collection of artifacts significantly. We've forged partnerships with Laconia Historical Museum Society and maintained our portfolio, our investments in the face of the Great Recession. And so I'd just like to acknowledge that under Bob's leadership, or without Bob's leadership, none of that would have been possible. Today, we have a solid board, and I think, again, just to talk about governance for a moment, you hear each one of us present serialized, but just to encapsulate it for you now, you're probably aware that you don't see the superintendent of schools designee. Liz Rosenfeld from Pleasant Street School is the superintendent's designee on our board. We have a town manager, a CPA, a former president of a statewide bank, an attorney, a mother and housewife, a real estate developer, and at least for the next year, we're fortunate to have a manufacturing dynamo still on our board. So the good news is that the board has been through all of that together, and I've been pleased to have been vice chair for most of those 17 years of Bob. So I think succession planning, and that's referred to, of course, in the city's city council's goal setting. You talk a little bit about succession planning, and I would like to think for the short term the library is in good shape, but clearly one of the things that we will need to focus on is succession planning, and in particular paying attention to who our stewards of wealth management are. Talking a little bit about operation, some numbers that you might find interesting. In the last calendar year, we had 121,775 visits to the library. We circulated 110,255 items. That's books and DVDs and movies, audiobooks, etc. We conducted 449 programs attracting 8,286 attendees. We have 5,886 library card holders, and by the way, they roll off the system. It's not like we're just keeping an ongoing list of people who once were library card holders. That's a current and active list. We've acquired 6,405 print items, and again, that's thanks to the taxpayer contribution. We deaccessioned 2,783. It turns out no one wants to read how Lance Armstrong strategized for winning the Tour de France anymore, just for example. That's a net increase of 3,600 items. Our computer use is 18,307. I was surprised by this number. We had 11,730 prints from our microfilm machine last year, and we answered 9,494 research and reference questions. I'm pleased to see that after a trend of going down, that number has turned around and going back up. It turns out that librarians are actually better at answering questions than Google. So just to talk a little bit about the council goals, regionalization in library speak is slightly different than it is to some others. We're awfully proud of the partnership we have with the New Hampshire State Library. New Hampshire Downloadables, which is our audiobook program through the state, added some 10,000 titles this year. It's now up to 31,000. I don't have a good number of how many items we have access to through Hoopla, but my best guess is somewhere around 2.6 million items. So That's the beginning of our regionalization. It's more statewide and nationwide, but there certainly are opportunities we're hoping to explore closer to home as well. I'd also like to pay attention to differentiation. You talk about the need for good schools to attract families to move to Laconia, and clearly a good library is part of the same effort as having good schools. Meredith and Guilford Guilford has conducted a major library project, and of course Meredith is endeavoring to undertake one. Laconia needs to maintain its posture as the county seat and the go-to library. And lastly, I think what we want to talk about a little bit is economic development. STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, has lots of opportunities within the library, and we'd really like to talk about how the library plays into that, both with the school systems in Laconia and to attract people from elsewhere. As it relates to 3D printers. Just as an example, my nephew, who's a mechanical engineer in his first year out of college, was using a 3D printer that actually has an emulsion process added to it, which drastically changes the crystalline structure of 3D printing and therefore its applications. That's miles ahead of where any other library in the state of New Hampshire is, but we should be having those conversations now so that we can avail ourselves of that opportunity and for our patrons. So that is sort of the operation of where we are. We don't foresee any major changes. In fact, you'll notice that excluding salaries and the human resources costs, our actual library operations budget is ever so slightly down from previous year. And so we're doing our best to be frugal and recognizing that we have finite resources here in the city, but we want to maximize our return to the taxpayers. So with that, do you have any questions about the budget?
Questions for Mr. Moriarty? Well, I did just find out that my library card is no longer valid, so
We'll be sure to get you an updated one.
how does that work, by the way?
Well, you have to prove that you're a Laconia resident or that you work in the
Oh,
city
but I
of
mean, how do you
Laconia.
cull the, I
Our
think I can prove that.
I want to be sure. Our computer, of course, in 2002, I think we computerized, and so we keep track of when the library card was issued, and so it culls automatically on the 3-year anniversary of the card.
So if there's been no activity for 3 years, it gets deleted?
My understanding is regardless of activity, it gets put in the non-active state, and the next time you come in to borrow, we'll confirm that you're still who you say you are, and at that point, it's a very effortless process, a couple of keystrokes, and you are renewed.
That's correct. It's not exactly deleted. If you come in and you say, we check you still live in Laconia.
Have to get up to the mic.
we Renew it again. Sorry. So, yeah, and I feel like that gives us a more accurate representation of actual active cardholders in Laconia.
So how many active do we have now, did you
It
say?
was a little under 6,000. A lot of libraries tend to, once you've gotten a card,
always have a
you always have a card, and then they're counting that as an active user. So I feel like our numbers are more reflective of the number of people that are actually using Laconia
So you don't have
Public
anybody
Library.
that last voted for Lyndon Johnson? or
Right,
something on
or has been, long gone from this planet for 5 and 10 years. So anyway, we like to keep our list up to date and current.
Councilor Lippman?
Randy, from an operations standpoint, what are your biggest challenges right now, operationally?
I feel like, advances in technology, the STEM type of programming that John talked about, kind of keeping up with that type of programming and trying to find a way for me and my staff to, first of all, verse ourselves on it. It's kind of, we're librarians, we're not scientists, we're not mathematicians, but to try to find a way to make that, to have programs that will enrich the community. And I've noted that the schools this year seem to be doing more of that, so hopefully in the upcoming year, we'll be able to collaborate with them and work together. We've always had good relationships with the elementary schools, all the schools, the high school, the middle school. So I think that's really the main challenge, is to keep current with changes in our society and how kids learn and how we can help them learn and keep them coming into the library, keep them reading, keep them accessing us in some fashion. I think we've done a good job, but we could do better, and I look forward to working with the schools as we move forward.
I note in the budget here that we have $72,500 budgeted for books and $17,000 for non-print media and $11,000 for periodicals. In terms of those first two numbers, is that a relatively accurate reflection of the lending percentage as well? Just trying to get a feel for what percent books represents any more of the,
Yeah,
lending
I've been kind of surprised because our book circulation, it like dipped a little bit 2 or 3 years ago, and it seems to have revived back, so we're sort of at a level ground. We always have more and more people using Hoopla, which is the downloadable resource, the state downloadable books and e-books. There's more and more use of that. But for the time being, I think that the ratio that we spend on books and non-print material works. But, I think it's something when we put the budget together in the fall, this budget, we look at it pretty closely. It's been the same, but we've added, the Hoopla, it's not broken down in there, but we've added like $6,000 of that. That's a new expense as of a couple years ago.
So
And
which
that's
budget?
that's actually in the book line.
The book line?
The Hoopla, yeah.
Okay.
So we've had to, that's something that was brand new to us, and it's running about $6,000 a year, so we've put that in the book. But it's books, but at some point, we may want to kind of rejigger that. But we're always cognizant of, new formats and making sure that we're not spending
so
just...
what does the book budget cover exactly? Other than
The book cover,
buying actual
it covers
books?
Hoopla and books.
Not e-books, though? or-
No.
I don't know if it adds any perspective to that, but as we noted, we have an annual circulation of about 110,000 items, and I think our landed cost is probably closer to $30, but our book costs in round numbers are about $25 a book. So at any given borrowing period, we have approximately $20,000 in inventory out, or roughly 1/3 of that acquisition number. So our library, our collection does circulate, which is reassuring. And if I may, following up on Councilor Lippman's question about operational difficulties, and this is my perspective as an observer, not necessarily a resolution of the board, but we see our staff spending a lot of time trying to keep up with the heavy use that the library has. We're very fortunate to have Chris Haddock from CBH Landscaping doing a certain amount of mowing and maintenance on the park. But I think if there were one thing that we could endorse, it might be the addition of the Parks and Facilities position that is in this current budget. I think the library would endorse that.
10 full-time, 2 part-time, and a page. I don't know what a,
Page is it's a library term for a high school kid that puts books back on the shelves.
okay. So,
And we have an excellent...
Randy, how does that employment level compare to historic levels?
It's been
The
the
same
same since
forever?
I've been here for almost 15 years. We used to have 11 full-time people, no part-time people in a page. We now have, when one of my full-time people retired, we hired 2 part-timers. But basically, it's the same.
Which we're fairly proud of. We designed the building with a primary objective of not increasing staff or needing more supervision. So that number has been extremely stable for the last 17 or 18 years.
And we still have a relationship with the Historical and Museum Society, presumably?
Yes, we do. We work very closely with them. They arrange exhibits on our upper level on a quarterly basis. And, yeah, we still maintain a relationship with them.
Do they pay rent?
No.
So,
The
I'm not
direct-
suggesting they should, I'm just
The
asking.
director has an office, one office down from my office on the main level. No, I think we've maintained the same staffing levels. We're open, if you look, were to look at the number of hours that other libraries in the state are open, we're open a lot of hours. And, I don't know what the actual ratio is, but the number of staff we have for the number of hours that we're open is, my staff work hard and I think provide excellent service.
How are
to-
security issues in this day and age?
We're in the process of upgrading our camera surveillance system pretty much as I speak. We've had one since we opened the new building, but it's going to be much more robust now. We're doubling the number of cameras. The cameras themselves are much more powerful and provide clearer images, and we'll be able to keep a better eye on things both inside the library and on library grounds.
And where are the monitors? Circulation, or what?
There's one at circulation, there's one in my office, there's one in my administrative assistant's office, there's one in the children's room desk, and with this new system, I'll be able to access it on my smartphone.
Okay, so you switch from camera to camera then?
Yes.
As opposed to having 7 monitors or whatever?
No, it's one monitor with all the cameras, angles on it,
One screen.
yeah. So I believe we're going to be using the same vendor as just did the parking garage and has done the fire station. So it's a concern, but, we cope
Well,
with the situation.
any public building that's
Yeah.
open a lot of hours has got to have some,
We have great relationships with the other departments in the city. The police are always very responsive if, there's other occasions when we need to have the police show up, so.
okay. Anyone else? Any questions? All right, thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Good job.
Special thank you to Mr. Selig.
Yes.
And so I'll let you speak for him if you could. John, how many more years do you have on your current term? Bob?
My term ends in April.
Next April?
Yes, I will not be coming before you to be reelected.
All right, well, you'll have to come back and see us anyway, so we
But
can
there may be-
properly thank you.
You may want someone on a board. I see a lot of advertising constantly, and of course, that's a problem with bringing trustees into library and members of city boards. Many people don't consider serving. Who knows, you may have another vacancy that may be interesting.
Great. Well, please come back and see us at the end of your term so we can properly thank you.
They're all interesting.
The planning.
All of them are interesting.
We'll let you skate on not applying for another term if that's your desire, but we would like to thank you.
Well, 18 years is a long time.
It is.
And it's a very good idea to get fresh people, presentations, fresh thinking. And John and all of most of our people present that. It was really exciting to have Liz Rosenfeld, who is, I think she's considered the librarian at Pleasant Street School, join our board. Because directly at that time, we were all thinking, after doing a lot of reading, that while literacy, that is knowledge of English, and reading is significant, it is also significant that one should be able to use a computer to move an inanimate object around. That's called robotics. And Liz was doing that with third graders and fourth graders in the school system by buying certain applications that caused that to happen. And we had a lot of very exciting meetings talking about what Liz was doing. And as a result, Randy has purchased a lot of applications for our computers and a lot of little things. What are they called, Randy? I don't know, whatever they are. It involves somebody going to a computer and writing code to, and why is code important, and why is that going to help Laconia's development? My next door neighbor has a son, graduated from Laconia, no, he didn't, he was homeschooled, graduated from college, and he's a coder, he's in California. He earns $145,000 a year. And he said to his father, he said, all of my friends who graduated college with me and high school, they're earning like $45,000 a year. He said the possibilities, if you're involved in coding and making inanimate objects move, do things, there's tremendous potential. And so in our minds is, if in fact we can get enough of our kids in school to be thinking of that and go forward. I have a grandson who's a junior in computer engineering in college. And I think it's a great place for him to be. But think how terrific that would be if we had a group of kids, a lot of, as continuing, who do that, and some plant, manufacturing plant, computer plant, got wind of that and decided to locate her here because we have that going on. That's part of economic development. It'd be a terrific thing for the area.
Great. Well, we thank you for coming and thank the
Nice
rest
to
of the
see you.
directors.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
You bet. We're going to move on now quickly to assessing. We got about 10 minutes, and
I'll have to cut down the hour presentation to only 10 minutes on
please do.
assessing.
We're on page 28 in the budget book, and the acting, are you the acting assessor? Is that?
I am not. Our assistant assessor is the acting assessor.
You're making
but
the
I will
presentation
be
tonight.
making the presentation, yes.
Mr. Myers.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Again, as the mayor stated, the assessing budget is on page 28. I will go through a couple of items with the assessing budget, and I've got some statistics to pass out, and I'll tie in a couple of other items in the discussion with the assessing budget tonight because they relate to other departments here in the city. But within the assessing budget, on the top portion on the salaries, things are relatively flat. The only increase over the prior year is based on obligations for existing employees going forward. You will note in looking at the salaries here, different than in police, fire, and public works, you don't see a retirement system contribution, or you don't see health insurance here. All of the other departments besides police, fire, and public works have those costs of employee benefits under the finance department on page 42. So when you look at page 42 of the budget, you'll see Social Security, health insurance, and retirement, and that is for all of the other groups, planning, finance, administration, everybody else besides the three large ones that I mentioned. So just one thing to keep in mind when you look at various departments, and sometimes you see larger increases, maybe due to health insurance. In some of the smaller departments, all of those costs are combined in one page. On the bottom section, listed under Other, you'll see a significant decrease from this year's proposed budget over the prior year. Prior year budget was $80,500. This year's budget is $37,500. That's primarily due to two reasons. The first one is we reduced $40,000 out of the budget, which we had been saving over the course of a couple of years to do a citywide revaluation. And having conversations here in City Hall and also with the council goals, some of the discussion was around being, more resident-friendly, trying to, find better ways to approach some of the challenges we face in city government in our operations. And what we've started doing is on the residential side of our assessment, instead of waiting until every 5 or 6 years and doing a complete citywide revaluation, which causes some angst. In a lot of cases, it causes applications for abatements, as assessments take that many years to come in and have a full-blown reval done. We're focusing on the residential units, and we're doing what we call a cyclical review every year. We're trying to go out and target between 20 and 25% of the residential properties every year, and over a 5-year cycle, we will have 100% of the residential properties done. So we're working that with existing staff and doing that internally. One of the staff has done some additional training over this past year or so we've got an additional person who's out in the field. The other reduction there in the amount of $4,000 was for the GIS services. I know we've had some presentations here on the GIS, the Geographic Information System, that deals with mapping of assets and property lines borders, boundaries, those types of things. We created that as a full-time position a year ago, and that's mostly funded through Public Works, with a portion of it being charged out to sewer, because the sewer department uses it, and that's funded as a enterprise fund, and a portion charged out to water for that same reason. So we didn't need to kind of fund it piecemeal across various departments anymore. So that's the change there. As the mayor mentioned, I'm presenting the assessing budget. The assessor position is vacant. We had an application period which closed a couple of weeks ago. We're actually doing interviews on Wednesday of this week, and we've got several candidates of some very good qualifications, so we'll be looking to do the interviews Wednesday and see where we go from there as far as filling that position. A couple of other things that are going on within the assessing department. As I mentioned, we're doing the residential properties on the cyclical reval as opposed to doing a large one every 5 or 6 years. We did contract out, and we just awarded the contract for the commercial and industrial revaluation. A lot of times, there aren't as many comparables when you're looking at those types of businesses, a lot of unique, in some cases, one-of-a-kind type of businesses, and we felt that it was money well spent to bring in a firm that specialized in just doing the commercial industrial component. They'll be working on that reval over the next several months and take care of approximately 700 property cards out of almost 10,000 here in the city. We are using some of the carry-forward funds that we'd carried forward for the reval, so there's no additional cost. We're doing that with funds currently in hand. Another exciting component that's going to help us with the cyclical reval of the residential properties, especially in the winter months, when it can sometimes be more challenging to get out into the neighborhoods and do the measurings of existing houses to determine if, you know, they're still in the same square footage, no additions, no upgrades, since we had been to them in the prior time. Is the city invested in a software program called Pictometry. And piggybacking on that, we bought into an aerial flyover that happened this spring in April before the leaves came on the trees. So in this particular case, an airplane went over. They break the cities into a certain number of quadrants, depending on square miles, and they map the city from above. And the technology is so great now that there was within 3-inch accuracy from an aerial view. So we can pull up properties, we can look at what's there, we can confirm measurements. It's going to be used for assets. Public Works and Water can use it for measuring components to it, because it's got some great drag and drop type of tools where you can pinpoint distances and do some great measuring. We also, in purchasing the most recent flyover for 2016, were able to receive the last flyover, which happened in 2013. So we've got maps that are with GPS coordinates that line up precisely one on top of the other, which is great for some comparisons. If you're looking at challenging terrain properties to access, you might have a situation where a property owner doesn't grant you access to their property, those types of things. So there's some really fantastic technology that's going to allow us in some of the winter time to be able to focus on some of this cyclical revaluation at the same time as well. So those are the exciting things that are happening. We feel this will be a big benefit, not only to staff, but for residents to have that kind of ongoing reval happening on an every year basis, and it feeds in the data more regularly. So happy to, in that sense, the overall assessing budget is down about $44,000 from the prior year. I'm going to pass out a handout, which is the same type of handout you've seen for the past couple of years, and I'll wait till it gets around, but it just shows some statistical data, and there will be an extra one coming for the clerk and the finance director, but the printer froze midstream, so I got what I got. I think I've got enough for the mayor and council here.
Let's see, we don't have enough on this side. Here we go.
We'll skip Bob, he missed everything anyway.
We need one more.
This-
Let's take Dave's.
One more for the clerk, I think. Or
You can leave that one for Councilor Bounds, I'll get the clerk one tomorrow. So you've seen these pages before in prior years, so this is looking back from the the current assessing year, which again ended on March 31st of this year, so 2013 through 2016, you can see total sales are running at 414 for the most recent period, compared last year to 289, and the prior years of 361, 335, so that's a healthy rebound. Broken down by categories of sales over $1.25 million, between $1 and $1.25 million and on down. You can see that some of the higher-end properties are starting to move, and some sales in the higher-end range, which is positive as well. So if you turn to the second year, again, that just shows, the second page, I'm sorry, that just shows you the prior 6 years on a line graph, and you can see it's a really nice spike from where we were last year to this year. The third page shows you the average sales price as well as the median sales price, and you can see in both instances, we're now starting to see the trend over the past couple of years of the average and the median prices trending upward, where we had some slowdown in the 2008-9 range. The fourth page, dealing with a number of abatements. Pretty obvious when you look back at 2010, that's the last time the city had the full revaluation that I was just speaking to. We had 442 abatements, and that's typical. That's what a lot of communities will see, because a company comes in, maybe they're not as familiar with our properties, and that's not a knock against the companies that are doing it. They're coming in and doing the best job that they can with it. But you can see then, the abatements tend to trend down after a few years, and we're down at 67, which somewhere between 50 and 90 seems to be the trend. So hopefully by us doing this cyclical reval of doing the 20 to 25% of residential properties every year, takes that spike, which again causes some angst and unknown and confusion within the community. And then the final page, again, just tied into the number of foreclosures. You can see that we were at a high of 93 foreclosures in 2012. 2013 had 85 foreclosures. The last 3 years, we've had 26, 14, and 12. And again, tying into the economic times, I think that speaks, that page stands alone in what it represents and tied to the economy. So that's a brief overview of what is currently happening in assessing, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Questions for the manager? Councilor Lippman.
So just in terms of the forecast for the assessor position, what's your sense of how long it's been vacant? We'll have a carryover in this current year as a result of that, or what do we see for the next year?
We will have a little carry forward in salary this year. The position's basically been vacant for, to the end of April, so basically 2 months. I'm not sure any final details on any accrued time that someone had going there, so not a whole lot is really rolling into it. We did revise the job description a little bit to tie in with today's world. We are looking for a certified assessor who has met certain, in essence, 300 level type of classes. We want someone who's going to be active in the field, really focused on customer service. We requested someone who is either New Hampshire certified or can be, if they may be certified in a different state. I'm not sure if there's reciprocity between states or whether they would have to come in and certify in New Hampshire, but typically if someone is certified in another state, generally speaking, there would be some reciprocity. So I was pleased with the number of candidates and the quality of the applicants, so I'm optimistic that we'll have some very good interviews on Wednesday out of it. Depending on the candidate and the time frame, I would hope to have that position filled, sometime in the summer months. Our assistant assessor, Deb Derrick, has been with the city for a number of years. She is also a certified New Hampshire assessor, so we're not lacking for that skill set in the office at the moment. But we feel that the new approaches that we've undertaken the past year, and including the pictometry and the cyclical reval, will pay benefits and allow for a lot more efficiencies in that department going forward.
Councilor Hamel.
Yeah, I'm going to apologize ahead of time in case this question has already been asked, and if it has, I'll check with you later. Sure. The reevaluation, I noticed it's not funded in your budget of $40,000. Yep. Did you already ask that?
Yeah.
I can give you a quick answer. We've got a couple minutes. We're doing the cyclical reval. We're on the residential properties. We're going to try to get to 20 to 25% of the properties on an annual basis, and that ties in with the state guidelines / regulations of trying to have all properties fairly assessed in a 5-year period.
Okay.
We did just subcontract out for the commercial ones because a lot of times the commercial or industrial properties are real unique. We've got about 700 or so property cards that fall into that category, so we are bringing an outside firm to come in and handle that component. The remainder will be working with staff, and I know I shared with you the pictometry when you were in my office last
Right,
week.
exactly.
So that's
Okay.
going to be a great tool for us as well.
Super, thank you, Scott.
Any other questions? Okay, without objection, I'll declare this meeting adjourned at 6:58 PM, and in 2 minutes, we'll convene the regular meeting.